Hello, everyone. This is Andres Restart. I am joined by my good friend Brandon, and tonight we are going to be talking about Nintendo as we tend to do when we go live. And
Yes.
yeah, that's the basic plan for the evening. Forgive me if things aren't as well put together. Well, lately things haven't been that well put together in general, so um, maybe even less so tonight. We're starting a little bit later than usual, but there has been some relatively substantial Nintendo news. We do have sales number updates. We got the Q3 earnings release, and from there, I think we can extrapolate some things. But beyond that, we're going to be just talking about some interesting talking points that have been sort of going on, some things I've talked about on the channel. Brandon really wants to jump into some of the graphics analysis for Mario Kart.
Yes.
I guess my video yesterday inspired you a little bit, so we'll touch on that, get your perspective on it, and what's going on there, and just kind of going into how like just talking about like where we're at right now and how things are going to be picking up really soon and the kind of turnarounds we're going to see. Like right now, as things currently are, it may seem a little calm. It may, the Nintendo sales numbers may be down, but this is the calm before the storm. So
Oh yeah.
we're gonna be talking about that and just how crazy things are going to get very soon. And yeah, whatever comes up in the chat with your questions, that'll largely steer the conversation as well. And that is the general plan for tonight. I'm not planning on tonight's live stream being that long. Got a lot going on, and I'm hungry, but we'll see what happens. But how are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Recently, I have been trying to build this Lego set. This NES and the CRT Lego set. It's like 20. It's almost 2,700 pieces. So you have to build an NES, a controller, and a CRT that has playable ish gameplay on the screen. So it's a very, very complex. And I did take a break, but I was working out over 2 days, and I only finished the NES. And the NES was 8 bags, 8 different bags of Legos. And the CRT is how many? Because the NES is 1 through 8, and then the CRT is 9 through, I believe, 21. So there's substantially more bags there.
A lot of bags.
A lot of pieces. A lot of pieces. So it's gonna take me quite a bit of time. But it's really cool. It's a really cool set. I've just built the NES, and there's like a little side part that you can take off, and then there's a little like World 1-1 on the side of the NES.
That does sound cool. You should
And you
share
can.
pictures.
I do have pictures on Twitter and Blue Sky. I've posted pictures, so go check those out. You can see them for yourself. And I showed off. You can actually. There's a cartridge that you build for I believe the original Mario Bros. Or Super Mario Bros.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and you can take the cart. You can actually put the cartridge in, insert it in, and it not snaps in, but like it goes in, and like you push it down, and it like stays in.
My brain thought this
Yeah,
was all
look, you
candy.
can see. No, those are all the bags, and those are all the bags just for the those are the unopened bags for the CRT.
Look at those buttons.
Yeah.
That is cool. Wow.
You can see a little cartridge. You can put it in, pick it out. It's so satisfying the way you push it down, and then the spring like holds it in place, and then you push it again, and the spring like pops up. It's like, oh, it's so cool.
Wow.
There's actually like spring-loaded mechanism in there.
No, that is very cool. Very cool. I haven't been doing.
Yeah, that took me like 6 hours to build that. So
And so now you got to build this old CRT television
Yes,
next.
and it has like a crank, and you crank it, and the screen like rotates somewhere. It goes through the level, so it's a very very complicated build.
Wow.
I haven't started that part yet, but it's gonna be crazy when I do.
It looks crazy, but in a good way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is very cool. Yes, this is a Lego set.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love me some Legos. Such a satisfying thing to do.
I'm a little jealous. If anyone, somebody, can someone let me know if everything is looking and sounding okay? I'd appreciate it. But
I mean,
yeah.
also, I did not buy that Lego set. That's like a $300 set. My siblings, for my birthday, they like pulled together money and bought that for me. So I did not buy a $300 Lego set just out of the blue. Wish I could have that kind of extra cash at the moment.
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, so you've been sitting on this set for how long?
Yeah, they bought it for me. Not even my last birthday. I think it was the birthday before. I think I've had it for like a year and a half. Something like that. I've had it for a while,
Okay.
but I've just been intimidated by the 2,700 pieces.
But you have finally, started this undertaking, and I mean, it looks good so far. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I heard a meow from your cat.
Yeah. He jumped on the bed and then his claws immediately got stuck.
Oh.
It's like, bro.
Well, checking with the chat here, Stephen Lindsay says everything looks and sounds good. I appreciate you. Matthew says it sounds good. Robeer as well. Cold Brew. Jared, Having Hope, Connor, thank you all for letting me know that everything looks and sounds good. I appreciate that. It looks like there's no issues to start the show off, so
That's good.
That's a good start, right? Checking with the chat now. Cold Red added me earlier. What's up, Andres and Brandon? Was pretty glad to see Super Mario will get added to the Nintendo Music app. Oh, did they add that to the app? Okay.
Oh, I actually downloaded the app like the other day because I wanted to stop being like
There we go.
on my phone too much, in the sense that like I wanted something that I could listen to, but not wasn't like a podcast or like something that I had to like pay attention to, because I wanted to just shut my brain off and build this Lego set. So I put on I downloaded Nintendo
that's
app and
a
I
good.
put on music.
Because
there's no lyrics,
that would be pretty good. Yeah,
I did
okay,
not.
I get
I
you.
don't think I heard. Actually, I might have heard some songs from that. Heard a lot of good songs. Some KK Slider came on. It was nice. Very good. Love me some KK Slider.
That's cool. That is cool. Yeah, I didn't realize they added that. Like I see the notifications, but my brain just tunes it out. My brain's been tuning out a lot lately.
Very fair.
Crazy. Super Gaming asks me, do you still think a direct is possible this week despite not being announced yet? I personally don't feel like it, and I think there's going to be next week at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be this week.
I wasn't really expecting this week anyways.
Maybe they could shadow drop it tomorrow, right? If it's like a mini or a partner.
Yeah.
But that's not my expectation. I mean, I made a video like last Friday talking about when the direct would happen. I brought the fourth and fifth up, but I said in that video I think more likely it's going to be the week after. So we'll see what happens, right? It's not even guaranteed for next week either. But to me, next week makes the most sense. I suppose they could wait another week after that. But my thinking is if we're going to see like a Prime 2 remastered shadow drop announcement, and you still want the game to be out in February, physically, like essentially I'm basically kind of looking at it if they're going to do the same thing as they did with Prime 1 Remastered, where they announced it it was February 8th, and then 2 weeks, basically 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks later, on February 22nd, the physical version of Metroid Prime came out. So I'm kind of pulling for a scenario like that, and so next week that is still on the table. But we get to the third week.
Hmm.
I mean, they could still Shadow Drop Prime 2, but a physical version coming out in February seems pretty unlikely. Or if it is, it'll be
Yeah.
leaked, and we'll know about it really soon. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. It's been reported there'll be a direct this month. The historical record suggests there will be one. Um,
There's a
so
need for one.
we're
There's
only
not
on the
much
4th of the
known
month.
after March.
Well, yeah,
There's
it's
nothing
only the
known.
4th of February. We shouldn't really be doubting, like,
Right.
yeah, like there's plenty of time in the month left for there to be a direct.
But for this week
Yeah,
specifically, yeah, I'm not buying it. Could be
yeah.
Shadow Drop, but I don't think so.
I mean, they could also announce a direct tomorrow for a show on a Thursday.
They could.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I mean, tomorrow might come by. And if we don't hear anything, then assume next week at the earliest. I'd like to point out Adam Rohn, been a member for 21 months, says, yo to you as well. Thank you for being a member all this time. And Boo Mini has gifted another membership, and Wily Tiger is the winner of said membership.
Nice.
Awesome. So scrolling through here, I see Connor had added me earlier. Hi, man. Okay, so Nintendo and HAL don't do a 2-pack collection of both Triple Deluxe and Planet Robot and Switch 1 Direct. Then I would be so disappointed in both of them. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to happen.
I'm hoping we see, some of these long-awaited titles that the chat keeps bringing up. Tomodachi Life, I'm sure a lot of people in the chat are pulling for that one.
Yeah, for sure.
I am too.
You know what? That's a fun poll idea. Okay, I can only put 4 options for the poll, right? But what is a Switch 1 game you would like to see announced this month? What is a Switch 1 game you would like to see announced this month, right? So, I'm assuming things that make sense as Switch 1 titles, right? So I'm not going to tell you, hey, the next 3D Mario, right? Or I'm not going to say, hey, it's things that we would assume would be next generation projects. Not
I want
those.
Xenoblade 4.
Right, exactly.
On Switch 1.
But we can put Tomodachi Life, right? I think that's definitely something that can be in there.
I feel like for the first 2 years of Switch 2, anything that can run on Switch will run on Switch.
Yeah. I'm gonna I think Metroid Prime Remastered is definitely a common one that people bring up. Kirby, Planet, Robobot. That one's rumored, and we just recently they put on a reprint of the official Nintendo licensed statue of Kirby Robobot. Right. So that kind of that might fuel the belief that something's going to get announced soon for that. And for a fourth option, what should it be? We got Tomodachi Life, Prime 2 Remastered, Kirby Planet Robobot. There's a lot of other options, right?
But
Phantom Pain here,
maybe.
Fire
remake.
Yeah.
Is that something that people? I mean, there is a certain crowd that really, really wants that.
Yeah, but the first thing I saw in the chat was Phantom Pain suggesting Galaxy 2 HD. So let's do that.
Okay.
Let's just to see how it does, right?
That one's not unreasonable. It could happen.
Yeah.
I'd be a little surprised, but
all right. Let's see.
Exciting.
Well, for Tomodachi Life, is it a remaster or a new game? Tomodachi Life 2.
I assume it would be what's that other 3DS game that got
Miitopia?
Miitopia. I assume it'd be like that.
So
where
it's
remaster, but they have some added features like a better Mii Maker and stuff like that. They don't really need to do a full remake or add a bunch of new content. They just kind of need to add some quality of life stuff and just remaster the game.
All right, so we got a lot of remasters here. Galaxy 2 would just be Galaxy 2 HD. Man, I wish I could put more options, but this is what it is. Um, I mean, I could cut out Metroid Prime and put in Fire Emblem Remake.
Nah.
Okay. All right. This is the poll. Obviously, there are other options. Let's just see of these four where
Which one do you want the most?
where chat kind of leans in. I think I know what's gonna win, but we'll see.
I have an idea, but I won't say because I want to change
Yeah,
the chat.
you don't want to sway.
I want
Yeah,
my influence.
Yeah. All right. So, what should we jump into first, Brandon? I mean, I guess we kind of covered direct stuff already. I mean, I think it's probably next week, but I don't know, right? I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
I mean, no. I also think it's gonna be next week, but I don't know. Could be, could not be. Definitely gonna be this month, though.
Could be the next week after. Could ever happen. Those are possibilities too. But if I'm gonna place a bet, I would bet next week. But we'll see. I
think it's gonna be. I don't know if we wanted to get into this topic or not, but I think it's going to be at least a mini. Unless we start to see a bunch of Twitter posts of Nintendo first party games, I think it's going to be at least a mini, if not a full direct.
I agree. Nintendo can maybe bypass having to do a mini or a general by just having a whole bunch of social media announcements. But I think it's at least a mini. Just because we are expecting a lot of Nintendo announcements. But, you know, if it's a partner, that means we're going to have a Twitter direct as well. So,
right.
Yeah, either way, I'm expecting first-party Nintendo announcements in the month of February. However that transpires, there will be first-party, more than one. There will be more than, like in October, we got the announcement of Xenoblade Chronicles X, and that was cool. There's going to be more than one first-party Nintendo game announcement in this month of February. This is what I believe. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
Specifically for Switch 1, right? Just so we're clear. For Switch 1.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the other thing I'm kind of like curious about, like when they do announce the direct, assuming they do, how they're going to word it. Are they going to say this is focused on Switch 1 titles? There will be no mention of Nintendo Switch 2 titles in this direct, or will they not say anything and they'll leave us up to kind of like speculate? You know, like there's a lot of different things they could do here that would be interesting.
I think if they're not going to mention Switch 2, then they'll definitely say that just straight up. They'll be like, yeah, Switch 2 is not going to be here. But if they are planning on mentioning it in any way, I feel like they're going to do something. Either they're not going to say anything, or they're going to say some like strange wording, like it's focused on Switch, but you know, they don't specifically say that they won't say anything about Switch 2. I could see something, and I'm not saying that this is something I'm predicting or that I think is going to happen, but I could see, like, if they talk about Prime 4 or something at the end of the direct, if they wanted to say, like, oh, you want to see more about Prime 4 in the April Switch 2 event or something like that. I could see some, like, subtle mention in that kind of way. I could see happening, but I'm not confident in that. I'm just saying it could happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything more than that. I think that's the most we could hope for, really.
Yeah, I kind of see something like that. Like I feel like I'd be surprised if we don't see like Metroid Prime 2 or 3. Like at all. If it's a direct mini. And it's going to be interesting to see like will they say, hey, we'll tune in for more details later for Prime 4, like that's me.
I think very maybe they just show, if they do say that they're going to or even if they don't say it but they plan on talking about Metroid Prime 4 mainly at the Switch 2 event, I still think they'll show like a little clip, at least like 15 seconds of new footage or something, and then maybe tease like more footage at the Switch 2 event, or just not say anything at all. But I think we'll see. If we see Metroid Prime 2 or 3, I think we'll see a little bit of Prime 4. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's been so long.
I bet you the closer for the show is Fire Emblem Remake.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like...
Your feelings are wrong.
Yeah, my feelings are wrong. I don't know. maybe that could be a closer. I kind of feel like that's a good opener or like middle of the show.
This is a remake, okay, of a game that has never been made in 3D. Like this is gonna, for many people, basically be a totally new game. And for what I personally expect in the presentation, this is probably going to be the most newish thing there, unless
Right.
they show Prime 4,
Well,
which I
that's
don't.
that's
Yeah,
why I am kind of like, well, they might show Prime 4, and if they do, they're definitely going to close with that.
it could be a sandwich. You know, Fire Emblem remake on one end, Prime 4 on the other.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it approaches
I
in the
do
chat
think
says, but still,
it could
but
open though, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. It approaches says, but it's still Fire Emblem, Andre. It's a niche series. Well,
Yeah, it's not like
so
super niche, but it's not like super mainstream either.
well, okay. Well, the thing is, if we're talking about Metroid and Fire Emblem, guess what? They sell about the same.
They're still
So
multi-million sellers, which
right,
is
like a Fire Emblem game is still
people
going to sell
forget
2 to
that's
3
still a
million
lot.
copies. And yeah, like the term niche is very. That's
Yeah,
very
literally
subjective.
millions of people have played each entry of Fire Emblem.
There are so many
Not
like
every single one has had
devs
millions,
that
but
would
several
love
of
for their
them.
games to sell 2 million copies.
Right.
They would love that.
A lot
Like
of devs are celebrate for like 500,000 or just 1,000,000.
yeah, and we have seen like we've seen Metroid games close Nintendo Directs. We've seen Xenoblade games close Nintendo Directs. And if Xenoblade and Metroid are on the same level as Fire Emblem, I don't see why Fire Emblem can also be something used as a closer. I mean, literally, Xenoblade
Yeah.
Chronicles Definitive Edition was the closer for a Nintendo Direct Mini. And if I'm predicting a Nintendo Direct Mini, Fire Emblem Remake would be a very similar scenario there if it was a closer. So we'll see what happens. But let's move on to a different topic though, because we've talked about the direct stuff a little bit already. So there's two directions we can go here, right? We can jump into the sales data and how that and what that sort of suggests about where Nintendo is headed and how there could be this epic turnaround, or we can talk about the Mario Kart graphics and abilities of Switch 2 thing. I'm kind of leaning in the Mario Kart graphics abilities of Switch 2 thing, but I want to see what you want to do, Brandon.
I mean, we can do that one first. It's fine.
I mean, you actually brought up to me before we went live, so I kind of figured this is what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I actually wanted to talk about this because you said I might have been inspired by your video. I did watch your video, but I actually had the last podcast. I had been meaning to bring it up because I've just been looking over the footage a lot. It's on my own. Just looking
you know
at
what's
it,
funny?
and then looking at like Mario Kart 8 and just be like, okay.
Last Thursday I went live on my own, right? And we spent a good little while just like zooming in on the pictures, like still frames of Mario Kart and just looking at like the geometry of the characters. Like I was looking at Toad and I could see like how you can see like how the red and the white, like it's not just one flat blob, like there's ridges in between. There's a lot of extra depth that wouldn't be there on a Switch game in most cases.
I really think once we see more footage of the game and once we get like full screen, like higher resolution, like higher bitrate, not so compressed footage, I think it's gonna be a lot. We're gonna see just how impressive this is because I think there's a lot of things obscuring it, but there's still a lot of signs. But yeah, the main one that I see is just like how much geometry there is. It's kind of like I didn't notice it at first because it's such a quick footage and they're moving like to different screens and changing sizes of things. So like when you're first watching it, you don't see a lot of the content. But something I really was just intrigued by is just looking at like the tires. Because if you go back and you look at Mario Kart 8, you look at the tires, they're like super blocky. And like
there are
all
different types of tires, but
some tires look better than others. But they're all like, some of them are pretty like some of the bigger tires are pretty low poly just because they're so big. Some of the smaller tires look better, but the tread on a lot of the tires, especially like smaller tread that's like not very deep, it's very obvious that it's just like a flat texture with like
Right.
a baked in like little shadow to try to
Yeah.
like add depth.
Check this out. For example, I googled just Mario Kart stuff, right? And this isn't the basic, like default tires, right? So these are two different types of tires here, right?
Hmm.
And there's when you look at
They
them,
look
like
fine, but like
they
there's
look
no
fine, but they look kind of flat,
the
right?
spokes are completely it's just a texture. Like there's not actually like
I don't. It's kind
holes
of
there.
like it kind of looks like there's depth, but it might
I
just be the texture like faking depth.
yeah.
Which I mean, sometimes that textures do that, but there are textures that do a much better job of it. Um,
Oh, there might be
yeah,
depth there once I was zooming in on the image,
yeah.
but it's
It,
very very subtle.
but the point is that this looks pretty plain and
I mean,
flat,
you can
right?
see the polygons just like
Yeah, yeah,
looking around the outer edge of the tire. It's like very
yeah.
obvious.
And then
They look fine at a distance, but when you look up close at the bikes, they're actually a lot more simple. Like a lot of the detail is just a simple texture, and a lot of the detail, like if you look at Mario's Kart, like that like fan blower thing, if you look towards like more of the outer edges of it, you can really see the low polygon there. There's a lot of places where it's pretty obvious. Anything that's trying to be rounded is like you can see.
all right, I'm pulling up a different thing now, so we can kind of compare. One moment. So present. No.
And those are some
All
of
right.
the better looking tires in the game, by the way. There
Right.
there are worse looking ones.
Yeah. So now we're looking at. I just pulled up one random image I have of Mario Kart on Switch 2.
Right.
Now, disclaimers, right? Because I talked about it in my video yesterday, but I didn't like blatantly point it out in the moment. When we're comparing footage or screenshots of Mario Kart, presumably 9, the footage we have is very small. It's off-screen gameplay. So what we're looking at now, right now, is blown up, right? So if you
Yeah.
look at it and you feel like it's kind of pixely, stretched out, that's because this is we don't have a really good look at this game, right? Like what you
No.
just saw of Mario Kart 8 was a very clean picture, right? This is not a great representation of how this game looks. You have to
No.
take that into account, right? But you can still see through the stretched out image and see that there are details here that are still more in depth than Mario
Oh
Kart
yeah.
8, right? So looking at the tires, right? Even through like the compression and the pixelization, right? Like you can tell that the tread of the tires has depth to it. I mean, Bowser's is obvious.
Oh
But
yeah. Bowser's is definitely like full like geometry. I'm curious what technique they're using because I doubt it's like and maybe it's just fully geometric, but I'm wondering if they're using some advanced technique like tessellation or something like that, which you don't really see. You see some like simpler versions of that kind of technique in like Tears of the Kingdom and Xenoblade Chronicles 3's DLC. But you don't ever really see even those on Switch. And so if this looks like it's at least, if not full geometry, which would be pretty impressive, it's at least like tessellation or some effect that's meant to like distort the geometry to add more detail in real
yeah,
time,
yeah,
which is pretty expensive. But you can also see like very rounded the coils on his suspension.
mm-hmm.
Luigi's lights on his car are like very nicely detailed and rounded. There's. I wish we had more pictures. I kind of want to do. I don't really have the setup for this, but I kind of want to do like a full video, like really breaking it down and doing a comparison. I would like that, but
I mean, I can try and go frame by frame here if you want. We've kind of done this a little bit, so I don't want to do it for too long.
Yeah, no. We don't have to do that too long.
Let me see. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Well, this might help be something. So. All right. So I'm sharing like a feed of my video editor, right? So it's not
Right.
full screen, but hopefully you can see a pretty decent chunk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just kind of scrolling through here, like you look at this, right? You can see the coils there. Like there's a lot of depth here. Even look like Rosalina's hair. Like you can see like divots in her hair, you know?
Yeah.
Or like look at like Toad over here. You can see how like the red spots kind of are pronounced, right?
Right.
Also, just pointing out that the ground textures are a lot more. Oh, look at the smoke over there.
Yeah, I was about to say the smoke looks pretty good. I was looking at
it
that. Like,
does.
is that like? It looks like it's almost volumetric, but
I
it
was
could
gonna say that.
definitely be like some very
Volumetric.
advanced card-based technique or
Look at
something.
the skybox looks great too, by the way.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about that, but
that smoke looks like it has like shadows and stuff. I'm curious if it actually like is full volumetric lighting that like reacts to different light source in the environment. It almost looks like it could be
the prettiest looking drift we've seen.
It's either that or it's very, very high resolution, very well animated smoke textures.
Yeah.
And a lot of them. It's very convincing.
It's only when the drift first starts. Like actually, they didn't even drift for very long. Was it?
No, yeah, I just think they didn't drift.
Oh, but check this out. Like, so, all right, because we actually have like a really interesting angle of Bowser here, right? And if you look, you can see, like, it's not just a texture, right? Like, you can see, you know, like the shape of it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's definitely geometry.
Because sometimes
every angle it looks.
Because sometimes the textures they can make you think there's like depth there, right? But there actually isn't. This is like.
Yeah.
Straight up, no. This is because we see at different angles, we can tell that this is like it's more.
That's
just
full
picture.
Geometry there.
Yeah.
You can see even the rims. Like there's full geometry in the rims. It's very obvious. Yeah. There's a lot of shadowing, like the car shadowing itself.
It's clean. The car shadowing's all clean. Like you can like that. For example, the shadow right here, like. We can tell that it's kind of like a pretty accurate outline of Bowser right under him. There's a lot of things like this you wouldn't see in prior games.
Yeah, it'd be a lot lower resolution.
There's a lot of stuff we've covered here, so I don't want to like dwell on every little thing. But that we haven't necessarily talked about that part.
Yeah,
like we've talked about the facial animations already. I think the ground textures look good, as I pointed out earlier.
I do think they look pretty good.
One of the interesting points that was brought up by Sungrand Studios, who saw my video, by the way, and thought it was great, so I thought that was cool. But he had pointed out how like it looks like there's volumetric lighting.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of implications there, right? Like we just pointed out the clouds, right? Like maybe there's something going on with that. I said clouds, but, you know, like the smoke coming out of the wheels. But then you look at like this fog off into the distance, right? And so like the idea of volumetric lighting is it's the illumination of particles in the air. And so there's a wide variety of applications. It doesn't just have to be what we're seeing here. There's different things you can do with it. But in this case, it's something that looks really good. So it feels more natural how everything kind of, you know, fogs up off into the distance. Something that I was like thinking about is like just thinking about like, you know, how the next Zelda game is going to look, for example.
Oh yeah.
And I had shared that image of the beta forest from Twilight Princess, how we saw like the god rays light shining through the trees. But now we have with volumetric lighting, we can like do that in real time, and it could look a lot
Right.
better. So imagine Next Generation Zelda game that has that. How cool that's going to look.
Oh yeah. But there's some, I think in Breath of the Wild, there's some volumetric lighting, but it's not very high resolution, so you don't get like a lot of
They
detail
can
out
do
of
it to
it.
a whole other level on Switch
Yeah,
too.
it's a lot more
Yeah,
subtle in that, and I don't even remember if it's in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, or if it's a different. I might be thinking of like Xenoblade or something as well, but it might be both games. I don't know. There are games on Switch though, for sure, that have like some volumetric lighting.
yeah,
But and not to like a huge extent, and definitely not the games that are running at 60 FPS.
yeah. But since we're still here on Mario Kart, is there something else you wanted to point out?
I like how if you go back to the shot that's like close in on the ground, and I mean you don't really have
Like
to, but
here
any
or
of the
closer?
shots. I mean, yeah, just the shot was like really close,
It's pretty close. This is pretty close.
but you can see like it's not just a high resolution texture. They have like some sort of technique, probably something like tessellation or something that makes like the ground actually have a lot of like depth. Like you can see like
Yeah,
each little indentation in the concrete there is actually like has depth and shadowing to it. Like that's proper shadowing. And
yeah,
when you go back and if you look at like Mario Kart 8, it kind of tries to do this, but it's just like very, very flat, and it's baked into the texture in a way that looks just very, very flat. But here you can see it looks like, I don't think it's probably actually geometry because it'd be incredibly expensive,
no, I
but
don't
they're
think so.
definitely using some kind of like tessellation or some feature
No,
to
like I think
actually
it's
have like
flat, but it look, you know,
displacement and shadows and proper lighting.
it looks better than a lot of roads in a lot of games.
Yeah. I would say that the resolution of the textures is like pretty good. But if you just focus on that alone, it's maybe not as impressive just because these maps are so big and that you're not gonna have like crazy, insane high resolution textures super up close on the road. Um, but when you're at like normal gameplay distance, it looks really good. And the fact that it has that like kind of tessellation and the proper lighting to all the different little crevices and stuff makes it just look so much more textured and like much more detailed.
Yeah,
Even though the resolution is good enough to hold up, like as long as you're not like right up close to it. It's just I remember when I was first looking at the trailer, they have a lot of shots where they're like the camera's like right at the ground level, and I was like, oh, the textures don't look that high resolution. But then you compare it to something like Mario Kart 8, which has much lower resolution textures and much simpler textures that don't have nearly as much change in them. That's another thing is there's a lot of different changes to the texture all throughout the different road surfaces. Whereas like Mario Kart 8 has a lot more just like simplicity and like repeating textures. It doesn't have
yeah,
as much variation to it, which is another thing that eats up your memory.
right. There's a lot more variety, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I
Mm,
I kind of want to take back what I was saying when I first saw the footage, because when I first saw it, like you don't really get the impression with the way they showed it that this has like a lot more detail. It's kind of like, oh, this looks like it could almost be like a cross-gen game. But the more I look at it, I'm
Yeah,
like, oh no, like maybe a version of this could be downscaled to
there
work on
it
Switch,
wouldn't it
but it
wouldn't
would
look like
not look
this.
like this.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, there's a lot of things that would be scaled down, or just taken out. Like for
Yeah,
example, there's even claw simulation, right? Like that. Like this might just be. They might do something. I don't know. Like I just don't even think that it would be there.
yeah,
Um,
I am hoping that's
like you look at
cloth
all those flags. Like
simulation.
look all those flags moving like that, right, and off into the distance. Like this, they're all doing it. They're all doing it, right, on screen. All of these are doing it, right? You have 24 characters here. Like this is a massive map. Like there's a decent amount going
Oh
on.
yeah,
Um,
just like
but
I
you
haven't
know,
seen any pop in the trailer at all.
I think I found some earlier.
Okay, some minor stuff. I mean, I
So
don't expect there
I
to be
haven't
literally zero,
all right.
but
I haven't like
I
I
didn't
saw
notice
it in
any.
a moment and I didn't think much on it. So I
I
haven't
think it's going to be one of those
confirmed.
things where it's like if you
Like
look for it, you
over
can probably
here,
find it, but when you're playing the game normally, you're not going to see it.
I can't
That's
even
usually
find
what I
it
would.
now. I
That's what I
can't
would
even find it now.
expect.
Like that's how like I don't even. I just remember I seeing something popping around here, and I don't even remember now.
Hmm.
Like I'm looking at that bush. Was that bush? No. Like that bush stays there. Oh, okay. I think I see it now. All right. So like actually, all right. So you look here, right? And then as you get there, you can see more. But that might just be vantage point. Like it's actually probably not. It probably isn't even popping. It's just angle. We can't. You can't see past the hill until you get closer.
Oh yeah,
So
that's.
yeah,
I don't think
that's
that's
just
popping.
no. I can't find popping.
There's no popping.
Wait.
Oh. I
Well,
mean,
there.
inevitably there is like some level of detail changes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. So
there
like for
is gonna
example,
be
you
these
look
things.
at
It's still a video game. Like
all right. So like you got these
you
flags here on
know.
the sides, right? So we can actually. Holy crap! This goes far, but you can actually see the flags all the way
Yeah.
down here, right? And so you look here as you progress, you can see it kind of change. But that could even just be the shimmering or something, or the it waving in the air. So it's far out enough that you can't tell with certainty if it's like some like pop in of detail or if that's just it moving off into the distance, which is that's a good thing. Like that's
Right.
the game has to load in appropriately, right? Like it can't have
Yeah.
everything loaded in. That is not
No.
reasonable at all. But what is cool is when the game loads everything in a method that you do not notice. It just
Yeah.
it feels like it just flows in naturally. So granted, we're looking at a smaller screen, so maybe we're looking at a 4K monitor, but also we're going frame by frame. So yeah.
Right.
Anyway, I think this is pretty awesome, but also I hadn't realized that the flags were here on the sides, and we can see them going all the way off here. So obviously,
Oh
and
yeah.
you see the boost pads here, right? But look right here to the right. You can see that there's another like flag, like almost like some sort of line. So we have this road going all the way over here. We have this dirt path where there's something off over here. Now it looks like there's wooden fences blocking off on these, at least on this side. But it's just interesting
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Maybe this course has multiple races to it. Maybe there's like a
maybe,
different course that you can play on that goes down that road instead.
maybe like what if like they've built several big worlds to race in, and there are going to be
Mm,
multiple races in different Grand
right.
Prix where you go back to that world. Like, what if this is
I
like,
could see that.
what if they
It
call
could be
this like
like
Mushroom Deserts, and it'll be like, oh, Mario Circuit in Mushroom Deserts, and the next one will be like Yoshi's Dirt Path in, Mushroom Desert.
they could do
Um,
something like almost. If this would be really cool is if they did something like Forza Horizon, but like a bunch of smaller maps. So like you
yeah.
have a bunch. Any map that has the same environment takes place in the same map, and you can like there's a mode where you can just drive around anywhere and go between them, but also like you start races and then you're just locked into the circuit there, and then you got to go through the different tracks that are throughout the map. I think that would be dope.
This you
You
kind
don't
of
have to
reminded
have
me.
like,
Go on, Brandon.
but
Hello.
if they have just like decent amount of areas in between like all these different interconnecting tracks that you can explore, I think that'd be really cool.
I'm right there with you. Did you recently so they announced Forza Horizon 5 or Horizon
Yes.
Forza Horizon 5
Yeah.
for PS5, right? But there
Right.
were reports that came out that Forza Halo Master Chief Collection, we've already talked about Flight Simulator,
Right.
what Gears, like there's a whole bunch of Xbox games that are coming to PlayStation, but also Switch 2. And so that's very interesting. Like I would actually be very, I mean, I'm gonna buy Mario Kart at launch, right? But like, I would
Right.
be very into the idea of Mario Kart taking some cues from Forza, but also of this game of Forza being available early on for Switch 2. Maybe also day
Oh
one.
yeah.
Like that would be pretty hype.
I mean, Xbox is going in the way where they're treating other consoles kind of the way that Sony treats PC, where they're like, we'll have exclusives, not necessarily console only because they're also on PC, but they're not going to be on like PS5 and Switch 2 at launch for their exclusive games like Indiana Jones. But then, a year, maybe 2 years later, you guys can have it. We're gonna put that on those consoles
Yeah.
too. I feel like that's gonna be just the way Microsoft is in general. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna see Indiana Jones and Sea of Thieves and Forza Horizon 5. Like anything that gets announced for PlayStation already, I'm 100% certain
Yeah.
is coming to Switch 2. Other
I
stuff
agree.
that hasn't been announced for either platform, we'll see what happens.
If all
But I
these
wouldn't be
games are on
surprised if all
Xbox
these are
Series
true.
S, they can probably, with
Yeah,
not
they can be
too
worked
much
to run on Switch
extraordinary
2.
effort, they can make it work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm right
That's the
there with
great
you.
thing about the Series S, because if the Series S didn't exist, the Switch 2 would be pretty much in the same position that the Switch 1 is, whereas
Yeah.
every single port needs like a ton of work and needs to be like very bespoke. But since the Series S exists and they already have to do that for a platform that's nearly the same power level, like very much similar seemingly, we'll see. It seems that way. Then it's going to be so much easier than ports from Switch that were running on like the Xbox One or PS4, because the difference in power is going to be so much smaller than that.
I see. I get you there. There's a talking point, Brandon, that I wanted to cover with you. It came up as we were talking about the Mario Kart stuff.
Okay.
And that's that, like you mentioned it yourself. At first glance, like maybe you didn't think it was that impressive, right? Like maybe you
Yeah.
could be like, oh, well, maybe it's possible on Switch One. Like at first glance, right? But upon closer inspection, once you start noticing all the intricacies and extra details, you're like, whoa, well, actually,
Go back and actually
yeah,
look at what Mario Kart looks like on Switch.
yeah, like the answer is definitely no. Um, but when I put out yesterday's video, I saw a few people with the opinion that like, hey, well, if you have to like take the time to like overanalyze and zoom in on everything to point out why it's not possible, maybe that kind of goes to show that it's not that great. And I thought it was I think it's an interesting perspective. Um, like if you can't immediately be like, oh, that's clearly next gen, then it's not a good enough of a jump. Like that is an interesting point.
It is, but
I
also
I will s- Go ahead.
I feel like a lot of it also has to do with, first off, the way they showed the content. It was super, super
Yeah,
compressed, especially when it first came out, because videos on YouTube take a while to like get to their full quality. It could be hours before like the compression gets down to a more reasonable level. So when I first saw it, it was super compressed, just absolutely awful. Looked like 720p or less. It was bad. Um, so that's a factor. They showed it off really bad. But also the map they showed, it's not that it looks bad, but it's also like not something that's like super colorful and in your face and like pops with all these like super in your face effects. It's just like, it's a desert. There's not like a ton of stuff going on in the environment in terms of like tons of trees and foliage and things like that you would, see, and you'd be like, oh, this amount of foliage and trees and stuff being rendered it would be impossible even at first glance. Like it's the type of content they showed is something where you have to look into it to see, because a lot of the detail is like off on the sidelines and very small, or they only really get up close to Mario and he's using a fairly basic cart compared to like some of the other people using much more intricate carts.
yeah,
They don't get as close to in a lot of shots, or they only for a couple of seconds, maybe like half a second they get close enough for you to see, really. And it's just like it's the type of content they showed and the way they showed it, not necessarily the how. I think when we get hands on the game, it's going to be very obvious that, oh, this is a Switch 2 exclusive game that's maybe not like fully tapping out the Switch 2's potential, but is definitely not something that could be run and look anywhere close to this good on Switch. It's be pretty obvious.
yeah. I mean, I think there's another consideration to be made here. and this doesn't serve your argument necessarily, but I think it's still worth considering. Like, what if this project, Mario Kart 9, right? What if they started development of this project and initially it was meant to be a Switch One title, but as they saw
Probably
the
was.
sales, yeah, but like maybe as 8 Deluxe continues to like smash records, they're like, well, you know what, we should just save this for Switch Two.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think it was in Switch One development for too long because I feel like they saw those sales numbers and were like, hmm. And maybe they had even the concept they had because if they've had this like big open world 24, maybe not open world, but like big large maps, 24 racers, that might not even have just been hard to do on Switch in general. So I feel like this maybe had a year or two of development on Switch, and then they changed the project to Switch 2. It seems very clear that the engine that they're using is built to support Switch 2 features. Like these type of features, like tessellation and the amount of geometry that's everywhere, and the lighting and the type of shading is probably not what they would have used on Switch. Maybe the PBR materials, like just the PBR materials and PBR pipeline, because it's not like they're going for like super photorealistic advanced materials in
right.
this. Like you're using PBR and it does look a lot more responsive, and the lighting is per pixel and more detailed. But it's not like they're going for all of these advanced different materials types. So
I mean, I
that
don't.
part may have been able to run on Switch. I mean, we see Prime remastered with PBR materials, not the most advanced, crazy PBR materials, but Prime 4 actually has. I pointed out in the graphics video that we made together that it actually has more advanced PBR materials than Prime remastered. So that part might be able to run.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, kind of thinking about like this transition from Switch One to Switch Two. Like there are going to be games where we're like, oh, that's a Switch game. Oh, maybe it's not. Or like when people saw Prime 4, like it's a very weird thing that goes on, right? So like Mario Kart for Switch 2, right? We're pretty damn sure this is not a Switch 1 title. Um
Yeah,
and yet there are people who think it looks like it could be a Switch 1 game. And then we look at Metro Prime 4 Beyond, and then it's kind of like the opposite side of the conversation. We're like, we know that they're showing us Switch 1 footage, but there are people like, oh, that's got to be Switch 2 footage.
it's gotta be.
It's just it's hilarious, like how that works, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, first off, we've already talked about it. We've already talked about like why what we're seeing in Mario Kart 9 is impressive. Like the scope of the map, all the different effects going on, everything that's going
right.
that it's doing. Like, there's so much going on there. Um, but Metro Prime 4 is made by Retro Studios. Like they're geniuses, and it's probably going to be the best looking Switch 1 game. Like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Prime
probably.
Remastered
Yeah.
already was, so Prime 4 is going to be even better version of that. I want to pull up the super chat here from Taker610. Next Xbox could be Microsoft's Dreamcast.
Hmm.
First off, I think Dreamcast is awesome.
Yeah, Dreamcast is great. I didn't have it, but I've seen a lot about things about
Yeah, it's a super cool system. It's a system that did not get to really fully spread its wings, unfortunately. I don't like the idea. I agree with you that the next Xbox could be the last like Xbox. So I'm not saying I don't necessarily disagree with your statement, Taker. I just don't like it in the sense that I don't want to see Xbox
Yeah,
die. I'd like them to stick around. Um, Now, I don't think Microsoft as a publisher, they're going nowhere. Like they're going to
yeah, no.
continue. Like I mean, they own all
I
these other
believe they're
big
the biggest publisher in the
devs. Yeah,
world currently.
I did. I don't see how they're
Technically,
not.
after they bought Activision Blizzard, so I think they're
It's
now the
insane. Like
biggest.
they have Activision Blizzard. How can they not be like?
Yeah.
They also they got Call of Duty. They got freaking World of Warcraft. They have, I mean, they
Oh yeah.
have Bethesda, right, which includes like Elder Scrolls. Never mind all
Oh
just
yeah.
the initial Microsoft properties, like
Fallout.
yeah, this, yeah, there's too much. There's no way. But Xbox, as in them making a console to play their games and other games on there, I think it'd be unfortunate if it died out. I think
For
competition is
sure.
a good thing.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm not really worried about it though. I think there's going to be a very different look. I think they're going to try something more unique um, with the types of consoles that they produce. I think we might see 3 different types of consoles next gen instead of just 2. I
right,
think that worked
one's
out
gonna
very well for
be
them.
a hybrid of the Switch 2. Another is gonna be your traditional home console, the PlayStation, and
Well,
another
there
one's gonna
is.
be a figment of your imagination, the Xbox.
They do keep talking a lot about releasing a portable. So does Sony. So I wouldn't. I'm pretty sure they are going to release. I think there's even some leaks about some stuff, but I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure they're going to release a handheld in 3 to 5 years,
And it'll
maybe a
flop,
little earlier, potentially.
probably.
It depends on what you define as a flop, I guess.
Well, like, okay, so for example, the Steam Deck is successful for Valve, right?
Yeah.
Steam Deck lifetime sales. Let's look that up. I know it's not like super substantial, but I just want to double check.
Yeah. There's a
3
lot of
million units
competition in
sold.
that market.
3
I'm
million units sold.
curious. What I'm curious about is because people keep saying that different machines like the Steam Deck or Windows machines aren't at all like even slightly a competition for Nintendo, and they point to like, oh, this one's only sold so many millions of units. Yeah, but there's like 20 of them. They all sell like millions of units each. So I'm curious what the total amount of like those machines are being sold, because I feel like that gives us a better idea. Not that I'm saying that they even with that collective that they would be like a threat to Nintendo, but there is some competition there in the market for those machines versus a Switch.
I'm trying to find like where the sales are at now, but the only thing I can find is that as of 2023, they reported 3 million units sold since launch. And so my only point is this: if Xbox puts out a portable, either company, if Sony or Xbox puts out a portable console and it only sells like 3 million systems, that is a flop for them because they
Oh,
hold
for them,
themselves to
yeah.
a much higher expectation. So, I just don't see. I mean, yeah, like
I don't
this
see it selling that low though. I think it will. I think they'll do at least decently. I don't think
was
they're
these
gonna.
10 million,
Yeah, I mean, tens of millions probably. Hopefully.
tens of millions. How many
I think
Xboxes do you think
Sony
are
at
sold
least
this
very
gen?
much has a chance. We'll see about
Yeah,
Xbox. But Xbox does have good brand power. Being able to do Game Pass on the go in a very nice, affordable box would be
how
nice.
many Xbox Series consoles do you think have been sold?
Um, it's. I don't know if we have updated sales figures, but the last ones I saw was
Uh,
not very much. It was like in the 20 or 30 million range.
yeah, according to my Google search here, it's at 28.3 million. Both X and S combined.
Do you know when they last updated the numbers for that?
I don't know, Brandon.
Yeah, because I feel like they haven't updated them in a while. Those are old numbers, but I'm not sure. Either
Right.
way, I mean,
Maybe
it's
it's
not like
because
they're
there's not
doing
much to
great.
update.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think they're doing amazingly, but
Um.
they're doing fine. Like you gotta keep in mind, like just because they're not selling as good as another company doesn't mean they're like
No. No.
doing so bad that they're
Right.
they're worried about like
So
quitting.
I understand what you're saying there, right? But comparatively, the sales of Xbox now are worse than prior generations, excluding the first one. And
Yes.
two, um, whatever handheld they sell, if it's like a complementary system, odds are it's not going to sell as well as the main system. So,
No.
you know, that what I'm getting, it's going to be a fraction of whatever they're currently putting out. So that's my main point. Like I just don't see it being like an incredible success, but it does come down to expectation. So we'll see. Anyway, since we're kind of talking about sales, I think we should transition soon
Yes.
to the next topic here. But I will come back to the chat for a little bit first. I'm going to end this poll here. It is kind of a slam dunk. I'm waiting for the poll to show up in the chat. But I had asked, what Switch one game would you like to see announced in February? I can only put 4 options. There's obviously more options out there. The poll's not showing up, but Metroid Prime 2 Remastered won at 48%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't remember the other options because it's not showing up anymore. It's just gone from existence.
Oh, rough.
Yeah. But maybe it'll pop up in a moment.
That is not the one I thought was going to win. I thought people were going to be really rooting for Mario Galaxy 2.
So I remember looking, and I'm sure it changed. Oh, it popped up. All right, here we go. All right, so they always do this weird thing where they round down the top winner. So it says 47% now. But Galaxy 2 HD at 23%, Kirby Planet Robot Remastered at 17%, and Tomodachi Life at 12%. Got a total of 116 votes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, this is an interesting question. Will Elder Scrolls 6 come to PS5, PS6? I'm going to say probably yes. And I'm going to go even further and say it's going to come to Switch 2 as well.
That it will. I'm pretty sure because it was something that was already planned to come to PlayStation, that it was like part of the agreement.
I remember there being a debate.
Because this was literally announced in 2018 as a PlayStation exclusive game.
Well, I'm doing my quick Google search here doesn't seem to suggest that it's confirmed that it is coming. So here's an IGN article from September 2023. The Elder Scrolls 6 won't come out on PS5, Microsoft document reveals. Stephen Totillo. For Microsoft's responses in the FTC versus Microsoft case, Elder Scrolls 6 listed here as Xbox and PC and releasing 2026 or later. During testimony at the hearing, Xbox's Phil Spencer went on to say that the game was at least 5 years old, 5 years out, and platforms were technically TBD. So at least as of 2023, doesn't seem like it is confirmed. But I'll say that like we're seeing Microsoft put all these games on PlayStation, and we've heard the reports of them coming to Switch 2 as well. I don't see how the game doesn't come to PlayStation and also Switch 2 later. Switch 2 maybe there's a little bit more of an argument in case that's like too intensive, but I don't think it will be. What I think
when it comes out, if it's targeted as like a PS6 and Xbox whatever next game, then maybe.
I think,
but they'll probably still have a cross-gen version.
Yeah, but what I think the bigger question to ask here is not so much if it's going to come, but when it's going to come. Will it be coming out day and date with Xbox and PC, or are we gonna have to wait a year or two for it to come to PlayStation and maybe also Switch 2? That's where I think the concern is if you have to wait longer. Because Xbox is not afraid to bring their games to PlayStation. It's just a question of, are they afraid to bring certain games at the same time? I believe Doom Dark Ages is going to come out across. It's going to come out on PlayStation at the same time, right?
It is.
So it's.
I would assume that this would be coming out, at least for the PlayStation. Probably not for Switch 2, but maybe depending on how long they've had that time to do that version, or when this game even freaking comes out.
Yeah. I mean, Doom Dark Ages is a Bethesda game, right?
It is a Bethesda game.
Yeah, it's a Bethesda game.
By idTech.
Right. It's a Bethesda game. And it's coming out for PlayStation, Windows, and Xbox at the same time. So why shouldn't we? Obviously, Elder Scrolls is a really big deal, right? But I mean, if
Yeah.
it's been if they've I'm willing to bet yes that it will come out at the same time, at least for PlayStation. Whatever the primary platform is for PlayStation when it does come out, that's my bet.
It would be absolutely insane to me if an Elder Scrolls game wasn't available day one on the PlayStation, considering the history of the rest of the series. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be wild.
Connor responds to the poll. So it looks like Kirby Planet Robot is in third place and Tell Me About Your Life is in last place. But yeah, what if Planet Robot was a double pack?
Then it would have won. Won the poll.
Nishwick, I think I got to your. I didn't see your question, but I think I answered it. If 3 million has went for the Steam Deck as of 2023.
Yeah.
I just did a quick Google search on it, so there might be something more substantial if you look a little, even slightly deeper. Rico Lee here in the chat. 9 clearly looks different. It's like the difference between New Mario and Wonder. Similar, but pretty clearly different and more stylized. Some are really over exaggerating 9 similarities to 8.
I don't know if it's as big a difference between the new series and Mario Wonder.
Well, I mean, I will say that 9 does kind of have the Wonder feel with like the expressiveness of the characters. I
it's
think
not like the art style is vastly different from 8. It looks very similar to 8, maybe a little more realistic. The shaders are definitely more realistic. But it's definitely still Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 was already leaning kind of in a more realistic way in some aspects. So it just looks like a more advanced Mario Kart 8. Like it doesn't really look like it. And maybe the other stages will look more distinct, but to me it doesn't look like radically like it has its own very distinct art style. Like Mario Wonder is very, very different. Like it's so much different, immediately obviously different than new. Like I would never get a frame of Mario Wonder mixed up with a frame of New Super Mario Brothers.
I think we need to see more.
That's true.
So, man, hopefully we see it soon. Now, let's get to those sales numbers. So, I don't even know where to start. There's so much. There's so much information to dissect. But let's start with just looking at Nintendo's explanatory material, and then we can go from there. Let me pull it up. Give me a second. All right. So, I'm almost there. I'm almost ready. All right, here we are. Did I pull up the right one? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I did. It just remembered me using this earlier, so it looked different. I was expecting the top of the page, not the bottom. All right, so this is their explanatory material for the third quarter of the fiscal year ending March 2025. Not gonna focus too much on the yen stuff, but there is something I want to get to here. Just doing comparisons of all that. All right, so here we go. Consolidated financial forecast. If you remember, last quarterly earnings release, they had dropped the forecast down from 13.5 million units predicted to sell in this fiscal year down to 12.5. They dropped it down again. So initially, they were forecasting 13.5 million systems sold for this fiscal year. Now they're down to 11, which, by the way, I told you they would have to readjust their forecast 3 months ago. And yes, but also
I mean, both you and me were like, they're never gonna hit this forecast unless there's a sale.
Right. Their software forecast has continued to go down. I think initially it was 165. They brought it down to 160, and now it's at 150. This is a bigger drop off.
People would be buying a lot.
Well, I mean,
software, so many people. But I guess there's not a lot of new games coming out. But there's so many games to buy.
Yeah.
Such a rich backlog.
Yeah.
You think people would go back and buy them?
Yeah. However, it's not all doom and gloom though, right? So check this out, right? The Switch is now at over 150 million systems sold worldwide and 1.36 billion software copies sold worldwide. For comparison, the Nintendo DS lifetime sold 154 million. Look at that software there, right? Like
Right.
I don't
Software
think
is so good on Switch.
like Nintendo's is cleaning house here. They're doing such a great job.
I'm not, confident 100% on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Switch has like the best software sales like to hardware ratio like ever.
The Switch.
Yeah.
Nintendo usually has stronger attach rates than Sony and Microsoft. So I'm kind of thinking the answer is clearly yes. I mean, 3DS, like that's I don't know, man.
So, yeah,
like
that's rough.
yeah. I think maybe yes, Brandon.
I mean, he's making it. It makes all
Look
these
at
look bad, but they're not. Well, some of them are, but most of them are not actually bad at all. So they're really good. Like even 3DS, it's really good.
GameCube seemed pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, didn't do as good as the Xbox Series consoles even. So
No, I'm talking about. We're just talking
Just
about
to
the
point that
ratio of
out.
hardware to software sales, though.
oh, okay.
We're only talking about ratios here, right? It's like a 1 in 10, right?
It's pretty good.
And this is almost 1 in 10. Like actually, the ratio here is better.
Yours is better. Yeah.
But also to your point, the overall quantity is pretty. What's crazy is that the Switch has sold so much more hardware-wise, and yet the ratio is still comparable to GameCube.
Right.
That's
there's
what's
so many
insane.
more people. Like so many more
Right.
people. Because obviously, like on something like the GameCube or like even the Wii U, I bet if you look at the Wii U, the software numbers are pretty favorable to hardware too. Because
They
like
are.
it's all hardcore fans. It's all the most diehard fans. They're buying every single first party game that releases, even if it's only 3 a year.
So what's insane is that Switch has kind of like the attach rate of just a hardcore, a system owned just by hardcore users, except it's not owned just by just hardcore users. It's owned by everyone. So that's what makes this insane. Also, Switch titles are more expensive than 3DS titles. They're more expensive than Wii U titles, even. Like this is the most expensive.
But I do
Switch
feel
game
like
cost
indie games probably bolster this a lot. I bet you indie games helps a ton. Because this isn't just first party software. This is like total software, right? Like every single game available on Switch.
I'm willing to bet that Nintendo's own software sales are the significant majority. But we'd have to calculate that. Once
I wouldn't be surprised if indie games is the second, like below that, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets not like I don't know, at least half of the amount of software like that is first party. I bet you indies makes up that much. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good indie games on Switch. There's just tons of them all over the place, and they're really
like
cheap and affordable.
72 or 73 different Nintendo published titles that have sold at least 1 million copies.
Yeah, I think it was like 72 or 73. I think it was 72.
And what's also crazy is that Mario Kart on it. So we're gonna get to that. But focusing on just hardware sales here. Here, Pierre, by the way, follow Pierre if you want the best sales data ever. He produces so many different charts, including this one here. This shows Switch versus PlayStation 2. So really, the Switch is competing with PlayStation 2 right now because the DS.
Are you meaning to be showing that on screen?
I'm not showing it, am I? No. I am now. Thank you. So this chart here from Pierre, right, shows. This is the red line for Switch. This is the blue line for PS2. Like, assuming their launches are aligned, this is the different financial quarters and how deep they are. By this point where the Switch is at, right, compared to PS2, as Pierre points out, the Switch is actually tracking ahead of PS2 by
Right.
21.64 million. And we're only 9.14 million away before the Switch becomes the most successful console of all time. Now, we are pacing ahead. Is there a fear that the Switch is going to have this tremendous drop off? And I would say,
No.
well, all right.
Like it's
So,
kind of slow for sure, but I don't think it's gonna have like a drop
all right.
off. I
So,
think it is going to beat the PS2 probably within a year.
so here's something to consider. The PS2 came out in 2000, the year 2000, and the PlayStation 3 released in the year 2006. So for 6 years, the PlayStation 2 was the premier primary console from Sony. The Switch, on the other hand, has been the premier primary console from Nintendo still for more than 8 years. And I do think that gives it an advantage in terms of continued sales, if that makes any sense, right? Like, so my point is that PS2 was still selling. Like, you look at the last couple years here, right? The PS, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm very curious if the Switch is going to start to have an even starker drop off once Switch 2 comes out, and I think it will. But something else that's incredible about Nintendo Switch that really makes you think that there's absolutely no way it does not become the best-selling console of all time is that Nintendo has yet to do an official price drop yet.
True.
So every other company, every other console ever has seen like multiple price drops, including the PS2, I'm pretty sure. The Switch has not.
It did.
I know it did. I remember, okay, this is not quite the same, but I remember in 2002, I was at the store and I had to choose between getting a Nintendo GameCube with 2 games versus a PlayStation 2 with 4 games. That kind of deal was available for PlayStation 2 2 years into its life.
Right.
I think they were doing everything they could to sell that system. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure. By the way, I bought the GameCube. I got Metroid Prime and Super Mario Sunshine. It's the best decision of my life.
This is a good decision. Although,
yes.
There's a lot of good PS2 games.
Yeah, but did I know? But first off, nothing's going to beat Metroid Prime and Mario Sunshine combined. But secondly, as a kid, am I going to know what games to pick? No, I'm not. But anyways.
Give me Ratchet and Clank on the PS2 and Gran Turismo? Brother, that beats it. That beats it for me.
I'm going to boot you.
Just kidding. Yeah. Wait. I mean, Nintendo's my yes, Nintendo.
I've been playing my PlayStation 5 a lot more in the last year, just so we're clear. But I've recently fired up my Switch to play Tetris 99.
I grew up with all the consoles, so most of my life I've been very much like an even fan, especially when I was a kid when Xbox was like really good. I was very much an even fan between Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. Nowadays, since Xbox is kind of bleh, it's mainly PlayStation and Nintendo, and I do feel like Nintendo is doing the best right now. So I would say, well, maybe not this current year, but this console. Yeah, I would say Nintendo is my favorite. Like I'm more interested in the Switch 2 than I am in like the PS6, even though I'm interested in that as well.
Yeah. We got more to talk on here, so I want to push through.
Cool. You read things, and I will be right back.
Okay.
I'll still be listening, but
okay.
Yeah.
So here we see the sales status, right? This is reported numbers of the holiday sales. This last quarter, Echoes Wisdom sold nearly 4 million. Switch Sports sold an additional 2.5 million. Mario Kart Deluxe sold an additional 5.38 million. And Mario Party Jamboree was the best-selling Nintendo game during the quarter, 6.17 million, which is impressive. But this is more impressive, Mario Kart Deluxe, considering that it came out in 2017 and it was an enhancement of a game that came out in 2014. So that's just kind of blows my mind. But also, as we see here, all these percent drop-offs, yes, year by year, sales are trending downwards across hardware and software. What is cool, though, however, is that what continues to go up year by year are the annual playing users. And despite the fact that 2024 is probably, in my opinion, the most lame year of the Switch era, still went up a little bit. So that's good. And that bodes well. Like, if someone's using if 129 million different Switches are being used at least once in the last year, that is awesome. And I assume the only way they can track this is because they connected online for something, right? So that's a pretty impressive statistic there when we consider there's only 150 million. Well, 150 is a lot, but that's a really good ratio.
I
Decent
agree.
sales numbers there. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you agree. Here they show some digital sales. Okay. It's actually, I mean, just sales are just down in general. Some people freaked out about this image here. I didn't think it was worth freaking out about, but first party title set for release in 2025. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, January 16th, 2025. It's already come out. It's irreversible. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, March 20, 2025. We knew this already. Pokemon Legends ZA, 2025. We knew this already. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, 2025. We knew this already. However, some people are making this, are turning this into a story.
Okay.
Because some people were afraid that Legends ZA and Prime 4 might get delayed out of 2025. But
I was not worried about this.
I have not been worried about that in the slightest. I will say, at least in the case of Prime 4, last year when they showed off Prime 4, they did say they're aiming for 2025 release. So maybe that wording there can be a little alarming.
Right.
But
it has been so long. So I can see why people would be scared of that one. But Pokemon? Like, the idea of Pokemon getting delayed is almost like a good thing most of the time these days.
I think it mostly has to do with Prime 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not happening for Pokemon. Like, we were asking for years for them to please delay their games, and they wouldn't.
Yeah. And my thing with Prime 4, they were never they were extremely quiet on the game. They didn't tell us anything about the game until 2024. It's by design, right? In a sense, like, the moment they showed us Prime 4, it's because that's when they were like, oh, we're close. They would not have shown us Prime 4 if it was up for debate, if the game would be ready this year. They showed it to us last year because they knew it would be ready this year.
I agree.
It's also nice seeing official Switch 2 stuff here in the in the explanatory material there. We already know about this stuff.
Yeah.
In case there's any debate, Switch 2 to be released in 2025. That's happening. And Brandon, I talked about with you last week how I think the Switch 2 is coming out May 15th, right? I explained my theory on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, again, the theory, I do not know.
We had both came to that same conclusion separately, too.
Yeah. Fascinating other little date that I'm seeing here, though. Super Nintendo World opening in Orlando on May 22nd. So maybe you don't want to launch your console on the same day you're opening a park. But a week later?
Perhaps.
Some people want to say that, like, there's this whole 222 theory thing. So the idea of May 22 makes more sense. But that I don't.
Just because there's 2 twos
I don't think that's why Nintendo does things. So
that would be a little wild.
I do want to ask you a question here, though, Brandon. Scrolling down to the bottom. Okay. Here we see Prime 4 Beyond is listed after Legends ZA, even though Legends ZA was announced after Prime 4. Do you think this comes with the implication that Prime 4 will come out after Legends ZA?
I do think that the ordering is interesting because, assuming that is the case, then it is ordered chronologically from when everything released, right?
Yeah.
You got Donkey Kong, yeah. So I buy into that, but also I think it's just I always kind of felt that ZA was gonna come out before Prime 4. I wouldn't be surprised if ZA comes out before the Switch 2 even launches. Probably not at this point because we're gonna see the first look at it late this month. So, but it still wouldn't shock me too much if it came out somehow before Switch. But I don't think it's gonna have like a huge amount done for the Switch 2 version.
Yeah. Um.
So yeah, I don't know. I always thought that Pokemon was gonna come out before Prime 4 though. But
Yeah.
I guess it's possible that it comes out afterwards, but I don't know.
I want to tell you that I was not trying to do like a gotcha, but the if we go back to Paper Mario Thousand Year Door and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, we go back a year ago, right? Looking at the bottom of their earnings releases when they show us the dates, these games were flipped. So it wouldn't be the first time that, even though this seems like it's implying the release order, that changes. And I mean, as they say here, notes, launch dates, and titles, etc., are subject to change. So it could be the case
Right.
that maybe they plan it this way, right? But they're not saying anything definitively. And then, once it comes down to pick a date, if both games are done, they're just going to kind of decide, well, maybe this makes more sense for this month versus this month. Do you remember when they like flipped Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade 3? Like they were going to come, like they were separated by
Yeah,
like 3 months. And they just kind of flipped them. It was wild.
that was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. But Xenoblade was probably done, and Splatoon probably needed
Yeah.
slightly more time, so they flipped them. It makes sense.
Splatoon needed more time than it had because that game was broken at launch.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I will be getting back to the chat. I just want to get through all this stuff here. So, I mean, there's so much more we could go through, but this is what I'm gonna get to some game comparisons, and then we'll come back.
Cool.
Actually, I'll just do this. This is simpler because we already talked about some of the games that sold. I was trying to find software sales, but there it is. Okay. So this is crazy. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is now at 67.35 million copies sold. That doesn't count the version on Wii U. If we count the version on Wii U, I think it's sold like 8 million. Like we're talking about like 75 million copies of Mario Kart 8 have been sold, which is astounding. If you count the Wii version of Breath of the Wild, it's like at 34-ish million. So it's just amazing how well these games have sold. Like Nintendo games have never hit these numbers. It's crazy. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Just how well these games have sold.
Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers. I mean, they're just all really high quality games. I think Nintendo does a great job with their marketing. There's so many people who have the console, but it is crazy that they can get such good like the amount of people who bought Mario Kart. It's like over 1 in 3.
Yeah, so it's more than that. Yeah,
it's wild.
I mean, there's 67 million. 67 divided by 150. That's more than 1 in 3.
And it's still like it baffles me because we see things like Indiana Jones.
That's how much
I think
Mario
has
Kart is
only been
sold
played by like 3
by
million
quarter,
people.
by the way. Like it just keeps like every holiday you see this it
Yeah,
always just like yeah, we're gonna it's just amazing.
I think Nintendo has gone to this place where they have like just insane IP presence. Like some of their IPs are just absolutely ridiculous, and then they have the quality
This
and their
ugh,
products to
I-
back up the games. It's
like
just they
Mario Kart
it's
Wii
crazy.
was a ridiculously selling game. But
Yeah,
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it's just like
wild, just
look at
absolutely
you
wild.
short stuff. And the thing is, there's already an original. By the way, Mario Kart 8 on Wii U was amazing
Impressive.
because there was only like what, like 15 million Wii U sold,
I
something like
think it
that.
was like 13 and a half. I don't even think it was
Yeah,
14 million.
you're right. It was 13.56.
Yeah. So that's an
So
insane. That's over a 2/3 attach rate, right?
yeah, it's
That's
very
wild.
impressive.
That's
Um,
over double the attach, or yeah, over double the attach rate of Mario Kart
right.
8 Deluxe.
I mean,
But
I
of
would say
course,
Mario Kart 8 is the
very
best
small
Mario Kart
group.
game ever. So this is like a
Yeah,
game that
yeah.
deserved another
This game is
opportunity, and
amazing.
when given its proper opportunity, it's literally the best-selling
Yeah.
game by far, and deserved to
Then
do so.
you give Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or you give Mario Kart 8 1080p, and you give it the best battle mode the series has seen. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
it's beautiful. But now let's take a look at some Zelda sales here. So, Echoes of Wisdom, right, has sold a total of 3.91 million, right? Initially in its first quarter, 2.58, then for the holidays, an additional 1.33. It's not bad. Those are
Yeah,
solid
not
sales.
bad.
But what I find peculiar is that Link's Awakening, a remake,
Yeah,
sold this much, right? Its initial launch 3.31, then following after 3.5. I don't think Echoes of Wisdom is ever going to catch Link's Awakening. I mean, maybe it could if it has legs. Like if they do some sort of update on Switch 2, like maybe, but I think it's unlikely
right.
that it ever gets this high.
I wonder why that is. I wonder if people were just turned off by the different type of gameplay or the fact that you're not playing as Link. But it's like, it's still a Zelda game. Like, and it's still a brand new game, not just a remake. So
Yeah, I have
that's
a
wild
different
to me. It's not
opinion
like
on the
there's a
matter.
bunch of other 2D Zelda games coming out.
So remember how we talked about how software sales are trending downwards?
Yeah,
Right. So initially, Nintendo had forecasted 165, then they dropped it to 160, and then they dropped it by 10 million more. I think
right.
it's not so much a situation of maybe you could be like, oh, well, maybe people didn't like that it's a game starring Princess Zelda as opposed to Link, like maybe. But this is also a remake, right? Like a new game has more potential
Yeah,
to sell than this, and also Link's Awakening had a lot more competition in 2019
very
versus
true. It was
I
stacked. There were so many games, several in the same month.
yeah. So really, I think the main like even if you want to argue that Princess Zelda somehow like her being the main character somehow impacts the sales potential of the game, which I'm not like that's hard to prove, right? When you
It's
account
very
for the
hard to
fact
prove.
when you
I hope
account
it's
for the
not true.
I hope it's not true either, but when you account for the fact that this is a remake with more competition, it doesn't make sense unless you consider that software sales in general are just performing worse. So let me point
Yeah.
to Mario Party here, right? Now, I pointed this out, and at first glance, you might think, "Oh, this is a sign to the contrary," but I disagree. So Mario Party Jamboree has the strongest start for any Mario Party game ever. And so
Nice.
yeah, games have more potential to sell a lot at first. But look at this, right? Super Mario
Mm,
Party sold 5.3 at first. Superstar
yeah.
sold 5.43. Jamboree sold 6.17, right? Like as the generation has gone on, like Mario Party tends to be able to sell a bit stronger. Also less competition for Jamboree, right? Um But
Right.
you look at the lifetime sales for Super Mario Party versus Superstars. I think it's very unlikely the Jamboree even catches Superstars.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it depends on when the next Mario Party game comes out. Because if they don't come out with a new one for like another like 2 or 3 years, then I think it will continue to sell on Switch too. And
Yeah,
Jamboree does have uh a lot of people play ever since Mario Party came online. I feel like that was very big for it in terms of like keeping like the like I don't think you're not typically going to see the third installment of a series on a console have the best start of any of those games on that console. Like that's not typically you see the opposite of that. But I feel like the fact that they have online play and like there's so many streamers and YouTubers. I watch people play Mario Party all the time who play it online on YouTube. I feel like that's really helped the marketing for that series. And part of why
yeah,
Jamboree is as popular as it is. Plus, it's just the biggest, best Mario Party that they've pretty much ever made.
yeah.
I mean, it
It is a
definitely is
good
the
one.
biggest, and I think a lot of people agree it's one of the best, if not the
Yeah,
best game that they've
no,
done.
it's fair. So I mean, this one is it's a little bit harder to tell, but let's take a look at Mario and Luigi Brothership sales. So Brothership has sold less than 2 million total. Thousand Year Door sold just about 2 million. Brothership may have better
Hmm.
legs than Thousand Year Door, so I could see Brothership passing Thousand Year
Yeah,
Door not too long from now. But both these pale in comparison to Super Mario RPG, which came out in the prior holiday. And I
right.
find this to be very odd. Like, maybe it's because it's a remake of an old game, so like the nostalgia pushed it. I don't
I
think that's
think
why it sold that well.
I do think that is a factor, but I also think it's because it wasn't the first Mario RPG that was released. Like, I think there is a fatigue at this point where people are like, "Are you seriously releasing another Mario
I mean,
RPG?"
it's 3 in a year.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, and for people who aren't like super into these different series, because they're for Mario, they're pretty niche in their own right, and a lot of people who might have played one don't necessarily have played series in the other ones. Uh, and a lot of people have only played Super Mario RPG. They played it when they were a kid, and they haven't played the other ones. So I can see that, but I think there's just too many of them, and people just see another Mario RPG and they assume it's like basically the same thing that has come out twice already in very recent times, and it kind of just feels like there's just way too many of them. I think they just came out with them too quickly, even though
That may be.
two of them were remakes and one of them's a new game. I think to most people, both of those were new games, and then uh, you know they were all three kind of new games to a lot of people.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot going into this. Also, like, remember the Mario movie came out this year in 2023, so
Yeah,
there is arguably a Mario boost because of the movie.
right.
Um, so there's a lot to it, but I also think that there is a a waning of interest. Like, if Brothership came out
Yeah,
in 2020, I guarantee you it would have sold better. I
yeah,
guarantee you. So I think timing matters a lot.
yeah. And I imagine there's because I don't play like even if I had Switch because I've been meaning to be like, oh, should I go back and buy a Switch so I can play like Mario Brothership and Echoes of Wisdom. It's like, oh, maybe I should buy a Switch. But I'm like, I'll just wait for Switch 2. I am curious how many people are just like, I'm playing my PS5 right now or my PC right now or my Xbox right now. I'll just wait to buy a Switch 2 and play those games on that because they'll probably run better. I'm
Yeah,
curious how much that affects people's sales. I don't think it's most people. I think most people are just like, but I have a Switch. But even if
I
I
got
did have a Switch right now, I think I would still just wait. Like that's why I haven't bought one because I just feel like I would still want to wait even if I had one.
so I had a little bit of a similar thought earlier today, right? So I've been I haven't given up on my Switch. I still play my Switch, but I've been playing my PlayStation a lot more.
Right.
I was telling you, I've been enjoying Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Right, kind of gets me thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, if they were to make like a Star, you know how there's a rumor for a new Star Fox game, it's supposed to be kind of like a follow-up to Star Fox Adventures in a way, like
Right.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Kind of gives me like a little bit of those vibes, like what a Star Fox Adventures made in the modern day could kind of be like,
Yeah.
to an
I think
extent. Obviously, there are
I think for
differences,
sure.
but there's a little
Some of
bit
the
of that,
older
right?
games may even give you more vibes because there was some more like flying through space and like traveling
Yeah,
planet to
that
planet via a ship. Which you still
yeah.
do in Rift Apart, but
I
it's
really started thinking about it
there's
in
more
that
of some of the
section
other
when I played
games.
with Trudy, where you fly around on like this dragon bird thing, then shoot fire. Like it was very Star Foxy, but not at the same time. I mean, at the
I
beginning of
don't
Star
remember
Fox
if I got to
Adventures,
that part
you
because I've
fly
only
a
played.
bird or a dinosaur bird. I don't. It might have been a pterodactyl. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but it could breathe fire. So it was kind of like it was clearly presenting you with Star Fox gameplay, but in a different way. What were you saying, Brandon?
I was just saying I'm not sure if I got to that part yet because I haven't bought Ratchet and Clank myself. I've played it back before I had fixed my PS5. My dad had it, and I played it for like 5 hours straight. So I
Get to
actually
the
haven't beat
swamp
that one.
area.
I think I have gone to that
It's
part,
optional. I think it's optional, but
but I think I beat all of that section. So I think I did get it.
Okay. But anyways, that was a tangent. The main point is, right? I was playing Tetris 99 today. And like I continue to get like Wi-Fi drops, right? Like I'm like right next to my router. And it's just the matches drop like every other game. And like my Switch beeps. Say beep. This is after I fixed it. Because the battery totally died like a couple months ago. Like 100%.
Oh no.
It would not turn back on. And for like 6 months, like every once in a while, it would be totally dead. I would have to do like a hard reset. So my Switch has been on its last legs for some time. It's been on life support. And so like I had a thought like, man, Xenoblade Chronicles X is going to be hyped, but do I really want to play Xenoblade Chronicles X on this?
Right.
I'm not sure I do.
And it's like you don't want to buy an OLED at this point.
No, especially if I'm right about when the Switch 2 is coming out. If it's coming out May 15th, that is 3 months from now and a week.
Yeah.
Of course, that is a theory. We do not know when it's actually coming out. But I mean, we've talked about it. If the April presentation is on the second, like I think it's, and then all the experiences happen around then, just like Switch 1. I think it's coming really soon. Yeah, so but I've had a similar thought though. Like I thought, oh, maybe should I wait on Xenoblade Chronicles X? I probably won't wait. It'll probably be my Switch swan song. I'll just I'll play it in docked mode, and that'll be it. And maybe I won't even finish it because it's a huge game by the time the Switch 2 comes out. So we'll see. We'll see on that.
Yeah, you probably won't unless you just really go for it.
I blitz it, man. I could.
Yeah.
I could.
Like, there's so much side content in that game. I literally put 200 hours into it, and I did not beat all of the side content or the main campaign. I was so busy on the side content by the time I got my Switch. I hadn't beaten the campaign yet. There was no backwards compatibility on that bad boy. Unfortunately, so.
It's okay. So let's start wrapping things up here. We're basically coming back to the chat. So we'll spend the last few minutes here just interacting with you guys in the chat. Q&A time. If there's something you want us to talk about or something you wanted to ask, shoot.
Let her rip.
Let her rip. Connor asks you, so if they do a 2-pack collection of Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, what if they call it Triple Robobot, Robobot Deluxe, or Triple Planet Robobot Deluxe? Deluxe might be kind of confusing, considering that we had Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Like
yeah.
What if
like
they
an
call
extra story?
Because they might even call Kirby Planet blah blah. If they call, they might even call Kirby Planet Robot Deluxe because that's how they treated the prior Kirby game remaster. So that
Well, that's why
I don't
they
know.
call it Kirby's Planet Robobot Triple Deluxe.
Oh my god! And then it's both games combined. That would be
Yeah,
crazy. I
it's
don't believe it,
literally
but
just
what if?
both names one after another, but it's also the name of a new game. Like, it works. Could
Yeah,
happen.
that would be the heaviest W of all time for Connor. That would be so cool.
Dude, the chat would be filled with W's, I'm sure. There's so many
Yeah,
people in the chat who ask for this constantly.
yeah, yeah. It would be wild.
I'm rooting for you, chat.
Yeah. So Taker610 with the super chat. Thank you for a super chat, Taker. So February Direct on the 19th, State of Play next week. I mean maybe, but
People have pointed out, and I guess I'm not 100% sure on this because I didn't go and look myself. But people pointed out that there have been State of Plays the same exact days as Nintendo Directs, or like the day before or after. It doesn't seem like Nintendo really cares about when State of Plays are, or State of Plays are,
let's
relative
confirm
to
this.
Directs.
So I'm going to the Nintendo Direct archive, so we can see all the dates for the major Nintendo Directs, or not even major, just Directs. But I now need to find a list of all the State of Plays. Sony State of Play
I've never tried to do that. I'm curious if they
archive.
have an archive like the Directs.
There's gotta be. Maybe they don't have an official one, but there's gotta be like a wiki or something.
Oh yeah, somebody's made one.
All right, so there's at least a wiki. Okay, so let me go to the Direct archive. Okay. All right, so here I am on the Direct archive, right? So
I'm curious how hard this will be to find because I'm not sure how often this happens.
the last State of Play was on September 24th, 2024. What did Nintendo do then? They didn't do anything last September. Okay. The next State of Play.
They didn't do anything last September? Oh yeah.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't.
They skipped September for the first time in the entire generation.
Yes. And then they didn't announce Switch 2. Yeah, it's all coming back.
Right. Yeah, the horror stories. The State of Play.
I blocked it on my memory.
Before that, May 30th, 2024. And so looking here, there's no directs around May 30th. Okay. Before that, February 6th, there was a Final Fantasy State of Play. And what did I say? February 6th? There was not anything in that week either. Going to there's a January 31st State of Play. There was no January presentation. Okay, so 2024 doesn't have anything there. That's not cause for concern necessarily, right?
Right. Their schedules are very different, so them lining up in general is kind of
but here's an interesting one. There was a State of Play on September 14th, 2023. When did Nintendo have their September Direct? Literally the same day.
Yep. Okay. There you go.
That's it. This is a mega direct, by the way. This is a general.
Yeah.
So this is the last general before the final general. So it was the penultimate general, I think. Yeah, it was.
You say final general, but we'll see what happens this month.
Oh yeah, right. As of this point, so yes, they've had a State of Play on the same day as a major general, and we may not even have a major general this time. So I wouldn't. This is a. It doesn't.
I don't think it means anything either way.
Yeah. So, we'll see. I mean, I just think next week makes more sense because you want to space out before the Pokemon Presents. I mean, they can still be a week removed from each other. That's totally possible. But also, if you want to shadow drop a game, that's kind of why I'm leaning towards next week. But the week after is still technically in play.
Yep.
Alma asks me, the biggest question I have is how they're going to handle Switch 1 updates and if it's only going to be for the bigger first-party titles like Tears of the Kingdom, because I want 60 FPS in that game.
I mean, yeah, I definitely think it's only going to be for, like, the major games. I don't know how many will get dedicated patches, But I mean, there's a lot of games on Switch that don't necessarily either they don't hit their frame rate targets or they have dynamic resolution, and obviously they don't, always hit that max DRS window. And some games lean very heavy on dynamic resolution and go quite low. So you're going to get a lot of instances where just running it on the Switch um, is going to get you at least much higher on that DRS window or much closer to a lock on that frame rate target. So, but in terms of dedicated patches for Switch, I'm really only expecting like the latest games, or if it is like a game that's more than like 2 or 3 years old, then it would have to be something like really, really big, like Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild or something like that. I don't think they're going to go in and patch every single first party game to run it, a higher frame rate and a higher resolution or anything like that. I think it's going to be a select few games, mainly from the past like couple of years, with a few exceptions of like very, very big titles. And I don't think it's going to be more than maybe like 10 games, at least close to launch. Maybe they'll have more updates, for different things later
Yeah, I've
on.
kind of thought of it as like the next recurring like thing. Like, how we're always like, oh, there's a new NSO title this month. Like, it could be just another thing they kind of throw into the pile of, oh, here's a surprise announcement for this month.
Yeah.
We're doing a 4K 60 version of Luigi's Mansion 3. That actually sounds pretty awesome.
Dude, I would be hyped. I'd buy it for
right.
sure.
And what's crazy
I'd be
is
like,
it's the
okay.
kind of game they might not do immediately, right? There might be just a batch, as you kind of talked about early on, but then like 2 years from now, they'll be like, hey, guess what? 4K 60 Luigi's Mansion 3.
I feel like these are perfect for like free expansion pass member upgrades. But maybe if you don't have expansion pass, then you have to pay like like $5-10 to upgrade to the new patch.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah, I see it. I see the vision. I see the money for Nintendo going in their pockets. Yeah, I see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I'd be so hyped to play Luigi's Mansion 3 at 4K 60 while I wait for Luigi's Mansion 4 to come out. But even with 4, 3 is still going to be a great game. I'd love to play it at a higher frame rate, higher resolution. Love that game. One of my favorite games.
Yeah, man. The thing is, that game might definitely
it's probably my
in
top
4K.
20 or 30 favorite games of like all time.
It's just that game. There's like a lot of small little things, right? And I think a bigger screen with a higher resolution would definitely help. So Crisscross here has an interesting question. Thoughts on Monolith handling a whole Zelda game by themselves? I guess the question is, what kind of Zelda game are we talking?
On a technical side, they could definitely do it.
Like, they could probably make it look awesome.
I'm sure they could do something that was great. I just don't think it would feel like the direction that Zelda's going now. I don't know.
But we haven't seen them try to make a Zelda game, though. Like, well, first off, they've helped the Zelda game, so they should definitely have. And also, like, we're in this hypothetical, we're saying they handle it by themselves, but I'm sure still, like, Anuma and certain executives would be like, hey, let's just make sure this is right. Like, that happens across all development teams at Nintendo. Like, it's not just, hey, we're gonna ignore everyone else at Nintendo while we make this. Like, there's at least some level of communication overseeing. Anuma checks in with all the other Zelda projects, right? Not just the Zelda team. Right. So I think it's still fair to consider that he would oversee to some extent. But you'll go on, Brandon.
Yeah. I think they would be a great choice for an Ocarina of Time, like not just a remake, but like a
reimagining.
Yeah, like a Final Fantasy VII remake style remake for Ocarina of Time. I think that they could do something to that level very easily on their own with minimal oversight, because they've worked with Zelda for so long. And obviously they're technically capable of doing it. They're some of the most technically capable people that work for Nintendo, period.
Yeah.
As far as a new Zelda game, I'm sure that they could do something, but it's not. I think the team that does Zelda is just so unique. They have such a unique vision that I don't think any other team doing it by themselves would feel the same as what like they would make.
right, like so Monolith Soft, we've seen them put out concept art that clearly has some Zelda similarities, even symbolism in there. Um,
Right.
and we also heard about Retro Studios having tried their hand at some sort of Zelda spin-off as well. They're supposed to be
Yeah, with Sheik,
like a Sheikah game, or like with Sheik, right?
which would have been
Um,
awesome, I think.
would have been awesome, but would it have felt
Concept
like a
sounds great.
normal Zelda game? Probably not. It would have
No.
been something different. Um, and I welcome that. Just for
Oh
the
yeah.
record, right? Like I'd love to see
We
Monolith
need more
Soft
Zelda
try.
spin-offs, I feel.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be. I wouldn't expect it to be, to your point, Brandon, like the main Zelda game. It would have to be kind of something else. And I'd be very curious how it would feel. I'd be very curious because the one thing about Zelda games, like the mainline Zelda games and also the mainline Mario games, the way they feel, the way they flow, is certainly different. Like there's a certain level of polish
Yeah.
and interactivity with the environment you don't see in most other games. So if
Yeah.
Monolith Soft were to be behind that, how might that turn out? I'm very curious. Not saying they couldn't do it because they're extremely talented, but their talents aren't normally done for those kinds of things. But could they implement that level of like polish and feel while still doing what they're so great at, which is big, magnificent worlds with amazing stories and cool RPG mechanics? Like I think they could potentially do that, and maybe they could even do some things different that we didn't expect them to do. Just because we haven't seen a dev do
Yeah.
it before doesn't mean they can't do it. They probably can. So we'll see. Or maybe
Yeah.
we won't see. I don't know, because
I
this is a theory. Or not even a theory, it's a hypothetical. Um, so
I think in terms of the polish, I think they could definitely get there. I mean, they literally worked on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
right.
And it's not like the games that they make by themselves aren't also incredibly polished, but I do think
There's a difference though.
there's a difference both in budget and the amount of time they take to make these games, but
I like
also
what you
in
said
terms
there.
of like
Budget. Because that's a really
yes,
good point. The
yeah,
Xenoblade games do not have nearly as much budget as the
no,
Zelda games, and
no,
that
nor
could
the
make a
amount of
big difference
development
there.
time. They're like half the
Yeah,
development time
it's a
or
really good
less.
point, Brandon. Yeah,
So I think they also focus on pushing graphics and when like the graphical, yeah, just graphics, I guess, to like the limits. Whereas Zelda with Tears of the Kingdom, they could have made something that looked closer to like that 2019 reveal trailer that had like a lot of like huge and very obvious improvements compared to Breath of the Wild. But they went for more subtle improvements in terms of, and they went for more like scale and doing all these physics things and being able to dive down between three gigantic regions seamlessly, and all the stuff they did like that. So it's a different focus, but I feel like both of them have very very good polish
yeah,
for the types of games they are.
yeah.
And Xenoblade has superior graphics, I would say, to Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild.
That's a wild take.
I just think it's true.
Well, you have an opinion.
I think Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have amazing art styles that help them a lot. But on a technical level, I think it's very obvious that Xenoblade Chronicles 3, for example, is far superior to Tears of the Kingdom in terms of graphics. Purely on the graphical side. Because obviously Tears of the Kingdom is very technically impressive in other ways.
Okay. All right. I see. I'm not going to get into the semantics. I understand what you're saying. I get it. I mean, I will at least say that Monolith Soft does some pretty advanced things for Nintendo hardware.
Yeah. And they got TAA upscaling. That's like pretty much the only game on the console that uses it. Minus like a few. I think there's somebody made a custom version of FSR2 that works in certain third-party games, which is also a TAA style upscaler.
Yeah.
But yeah, very rare, very impressive for Switch One.
And I don't remember the details now, but I remember we had talked about a few months ago how, like, just Monolith Soft working on new development tools that would definitely like make their process more efficient. That makes some significant difference. I think the idea was they had put together like a dedicated team for R&D.
Yeah.
and that's gonna kind of like basically really streamline their overall development pipeline.
I think so. I think that's also going to be R&D that's applied to across like multiple Nintendo teams. Like I think they're definitely going to share like a lot of their
Of
different
course, they're still Nintendo, so the
techniques and
answer
stuff. Yeah.
is if it benefits, they may. Um, of course, they each have their own identities, right? But yeah, there's definitely crossover. I got
There's
a super
definitely
chat here. What, Brandon?
just to end off the point that there's definitely crossover between their R&D. Like one thing that I think is very obvious that they share technology between the Xenoblade team and the Zelda team is that just the fact that they used I forget the name for the effect, but the effect that they used to make textures have a lot more depth and look like a lot more 3D. They use that in the DLC specifically, and not the main game, but the
I remember you
DLC for
talking about
Xenoblade
this.
Chronicles 3.
Yeah.
And then like that was like right before Tears of the Kingdom launched, like a couple months right before Tears of the Kingdom launched is when the DLC came out. Which and Tears of the Kingdom also has that effect, which Breath of the Wild did not have. And it's the only two games that Nintendo has used with that effect, except maybe like Pikmin. It's the only ones with their own engines, I believe, that use that effect. Because Pikmin's Unreal Engine, so it's kind of baked in features, not really something they developed.
So, I want to read the super chat here from Taker. Thank you for the super chat, Taker. I think a $50 to $100 price cut is coming to hit 161 million. And I also read this chat from Tater Salad. It's similar. The Switch 1 sales will drop off, but there will also be late adopters to Switch 2, so lower prices on Switch 1 will push the holiday sales.
Yeah.
I agree, Taker, that there is going to be a $50 to $100 price drop. 100 seems like a huge thing to do in one fell swoop.
50 is probably what they'll do, because if the Switch 2 comes in at 400, then you drop the 350 OLED to 300, and you got the normal Switch at 200, then you got the Switch Lite at 150. I think that's a good stack.
Yeah, I guess part of me just kind of like, man, the Switch 2 is definitely way more worth it. Like for that,
I mean,
like if you're gonna buy a Switch OLED,
something that companies use a lot. Like you see, Apple will go and they'll be like, oh, you can buy the base version of this laptop for $700, but it's only $50 more to get that memory expansion, and it's only another $50 more to get that storage expansion.
the OLED's been
it's only another
$50
more to get that CPU upgrade, and then all of a sudden you're paying like $500-$600 more for the laptop,
and then you have to sell all your stuff. You sell your house. You're living in a dumpster because you spent too much money at first.
Because they upsell you, man. They upsell you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 50 is probably it. 100, not at first. Maybe we see another $50 price drop after a couple of years or something, or a year. I don't know. But
honestly, I think in a year or two, even without a price drop, the Switch would pass the PS1. So I think with a $50 price drop, I think it's like guaranteed.
Yeah. The other thing is that what if Switch 2
is
PS1
not even... or PS2?
I don't remember.
I meant PS2.
I know you meant PS2, so
yeah.
That's what my brain heard. What I was gonna say was though, I don't even remember. I'm falling apart. I'm at my limit. Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. Oh, this is what I was gonna say. The Switch 2, like I'm assuming it's gonna cost $400. But what if it's $450 USD?
Then maybe they don't do a price drop.
Or maybe they do. And it's a reasonable gap. No, I think what makes the most sense is a $50
gap is pretty good.
Yeah, and then there would be $100 gap there, assuming Switch 2 hits $399.99 USD. So
Yeah.
that's what
And
makes the
that is
most
for
sense
the
to me.
highest end version. You can still pay, just 150 for a Switch Lite or 250 for a regular Switch with better battery life than the one you have.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games on the platform, so
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. Yep. Scrolling back to the beginning of the chat here. Alman asked me, Andres, have you seen those 4K 60 FPS Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom videos on YouTube? They almost look like completely different games. I have seen them. They look pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree. They look like completely different games. They look.
No.
I mean,
Oh well, it
it
depends
depends.
on which videos you're watching because they may
Yeah,
have a lot of mods installed or
yeah, the
something.
mods can change a lot. But it definitely looks really nice.
Yeah,
And so I would be interested in playing Breath and Tears at 4K
for
60.
sure.
I'm not going to
I
spend seventy
I would
dollars to
really
it,
hope that
but
they
I
have
would be
like
interested.
one of the biggest upgrades I'm hopeful for is distant LODs and just have a presentation like imagine running through Hyrule and you don't see Poppin in the grass and you don't see Poppin in the trees and you don't see buildings you're looking through you're zooming in by clicking the right stick and you're looking at a Bokoblin camp far away to like highlight it and it's like 3 polygons and like an N64 resolution texture, like barely even a model that resembles what it's actually supposed to look like. I would love if they just went wild with the draw distances there because keep in mind like especially Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom isn't as bad, but especially Breath of the Wild because that was made for Wii U and mind. And they didn't really upgrade the Switch version. It's it has very bad draw distance compared to what we could have.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, let me ask you a question. Mark Plot asks in the chat, can Switch 2
Yeah.
run Crisis?
Well, the Switch runs Crisis, so yes.
There you go.
The Switch runs Crisis 1, 2, and 3 pretty well. Especially
Crisis is
considering the
pretty old at this
360
point.
versions are like the 360 PS3 versions are absolutely horrible. Like constantly running at like the 20 FPS mark. And the Switch actually uses the sparse voxel global illumination, which is like in a way a very light form of ray tracing. So
Yeah.
very
All right.
impressive.
Two things. All right, this little thing is just me messing around. But what if with that 4K resolution and reduced pop in on Breath and Tears, we can finally find what happened to Cass? It's actually gonna be an expansion story. The whereabouts of Cass is a whole other world you have to explore
I saw
and
somebody
to
on
save
Twitter.
Cass.
They shared some artwork. I think it was Tears of the Kingdom artwork of like, for some reason, Nintendo was holding, or Nintendo was holding, Link was holding, like
Link is
what do
Nintendo.
yes, what's that instrument called? The one that Cass uses. I don't think it was the exact same one he uses, but the
I don't
accordion.
remember. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
an accordion.
And they were
Yeah.
like Link killed Cass and stole his accordion, and that's what happened to
Oh
him.
my
I literally
god.
saw that today.
Oh my god. So there's gonna be an expansion story, right, where we do this, right? It's gonna
You
be
have to
like
hunt him down.
the Zelda content for 2025, right? Like you hunt him down, right? But you think you're going to save him, but as the story progresses, Link gets darker and darker, right? It's like almost like Majora's Mask-ish, where like you're just kind of a little bit of a psychological feel to it. By the end, you go nuts, and they don't show you kill Cass, but you kind of know when you think it happens, it blacks out, and then you see Link with the accordion. Yeah, it'd be
Yes,
crazy.
it's
That's
gonna
not what's
happen.
going to happen.
It's gonna be the first M-rated Zelda game.
Yeah. Anyway, final question. Well, okay. There's another one I have to answer. Mark Plot asked, when does the NX come out? It comes out in 2017. You just have to wait a little bit more. All right. So this is the actual final question. Tiara added me. What happens to Pokemon Legends ZA? Why there is no news? It's been a year. So, Pokemon Legends ZA will probably see in the Pokemon Presents at the end of this month.
Yeah.
Yes, they've been quiet on it, but it's not the first time they've done this where they've been quiet for a year. They've just been working on the game this entire time, and they're going to show it off. And personally, I feel confident that it's going to look pretty good.
I think it's going
So,
to look vastly more polished than Scarlet and Violet. I actually think the trailers for Scarlet and Violet, when in certain areas, looks quite okay. And it looks like it's very nicely arted up. And I actually like the art direction they're going for. And I was actually excited for the graphics for Scarlet and Violet based off certain trailers, minus the large city environments that they showed that had like really, really poor textures and really just like the entire screen was just aliasing. I think this game isn't going to have those areas like Scarlet and Violet has, where it's just like clearly they didn't finish this part of the game. Like Scarlet and Violet, it seems very clear to me that the art pass for the game wasn't even fully finished. Like they didn't even put in all the assets they wanted to put in. Like they didn't. I don't think that game was literally complete, minus like being able to actually play the story stuff. Like in terms of like the environmental art pass, I'm pretty sure like they just didn't have time, and they seem to be taking a lot more time with this game. So I'm hoping that we'll see it in a state where it looks really good. I'm not expecting it to look great, but I'm hopeful that it will at least look as polished as like Legends Arceus, which people still complain about at the time, and it's definitely not the best looking game on Switch. And if you compare it to Breath of the Wild, it's not
Legends
impressive,
EA
but it's
is
not
going to
terrible.
look better than Arceus.
I hope so.
It's going to look better than Arceus. And it's going to be more polished. I feel pretty good in saying that. Feel free to call me a dummy when I'm wrong.
I would hope so. I think they've had more time.
They've been working on it for a while. It's pretty much a given as far as
it's coming out much later in the year, and seemingly without a mainline. We'll see what they announce this month, but seemingly without a mainline game coming out just like later in the same year. So it feels like this one is getting a lot more attention than Legends Arceus did, and certainly a lot more attention than Pokemon.
Well, there's no Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl that's kind of overshadowing it. Although some people think there might be a Black and White remake announced. We'll see on that. I'm not sure.
That would probably be like more towards. I would assume that would be the game coming out later. Rather than like right before it.
By the way, Char, just for clarification, we're talking about the Switch 1 version. There is, from the Terra Leak, some suggestion that there may be a Switch 2 version. And I mean, I assume the Switch 2 version wouldn't be a tremendous difference, but that would be even better.
I would just hope for maybe a higher resolution, but mainly just better frame rate and less pop in is probably going to be the biggest ways that they can improve over the Switch 1 version.
Yeah. Also, T3 MP3K. It's only February 4th. There's still probably going to be a direct for Switch 1 in February. Can't guarantee it, but we still think it's happening. We'll just have, give it a week or two, and then we'll see how things shake out. But that is all for now, everyone. I'm going to get dinner before I die. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.